All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of Kopitiam Council. We've already talked about the recent 25-year anniversary Silver Jubilee of Fatika Adilan Rakyat. We've already talked about some of the ongoing developments in our neighbours in Singapore with a new up-and-coming Prime Minister, quite young a Prime Minister, 51 years old, Lawrence Wong, who is currently serving as the Finance Minister, soon to be Singapore's fourth ever Prime Minister. Then we're going to circle back, go back up to the West Malaysia, and then talk about something new developing, which is the restructuring of the Employees Provident Fund, EPF. And I know a lot of us Malaysians, we like to talk about the EPF. We like to know if our pensions are safe after we are done with our employment. For me, I think I'm still a long way to go before I can claim my EPF. I think Haffisz is also the same. But I'm sure a lot of you are worried about your financial futures, the golden years after your long years of service is completed. So, what do we have with this restructuring, Hafiz?
All right, before we go into the restructuring for non-Malaysian listeners out there, viewers, not every single Malaysian have a EPF. In US you have 401k. In Singapore you have CPF. This is not a mandatory. You either could have a pension and some other private scheme of retirement as well. So, but largely, yes, Malaysians are on EPF. All right. The restructuring being announced, I think, last 2 weeks, is that previously it is 70-30 allocation. So saying that there's account 1 and account 2. Account 1, you cannot touch it until you are 55 years of age. And on second account, you can take it or withdraw, but for limited purposes. One of them is for going for Hajj or buying your first house. Other than that, no, you cannot touch the money until you are in the golden age of your life in the retirement. Now the restructuring that they propose is becoming another third account. So instead of 2, become 3 accounts under your name, and the allocations is a 75, 15, 10. So 10 is the third, the new account, and 15 is the second account, the Sejahtera account, and 1 is the your main account. So what's the big deal about account 3? The big deal about account 3 is that you can withdraw it anytime you like. So in other way of saying that EPF now becoming a bank. That's more than meets the eyes, because EPF is has a mandate, Adi. EPF, as you mentioned, Employees Provident Fund, is a fund where people would put their money for their retirement years. So that's their clear mandate. It's not the responsibility of EPF to become your bank so that you can withdraw money at your own will. So this is the biggest argument that have been made by a lot of economists, a lot of bankers as well, that this will deteriorate its on mandate and also its performance also when it comes to they have to responsible for a lot of liquidity. Yes, people are saying that EPF or having regularly liquidity as well, but with on top of this, it's gonna be even bigger. So what we're gonna see that this is remains to be seen, that withdrawal such of this 10% out of the savings will affect the dividend in the future, because right now it's pretty good, around 5.5 dividend per year. So moving forward, people are afraid that they can maintain such a good rates for very low risk fund. And when it comes to retirement, Adi, you don't want to jeopardize your hard-earned money, because this is the only purpose of it, the only mandate that he has. So if you want to have something that very liquid, or something that you can withdraw anytime you want, you have banks for that. And why are we restructuring our very famous and mostly popular retirement fund.
Yeah, so I mean, I think because back then, right, during the whole COVID situation, there was a lot of conversation about whether or not people should be able to take out their EPF to allow for aid to help alleviate some of the burdens that the pandemic has brought about. I think, in a way, it's following that same kind of logic. And I think at the time, right, it was very populist rhetoric to say that, okay, we should open up the EPF for people to take out just for emergency uses lah. So I think this was the what the government kind of picked up on and says, hey, people actually do want a very flexible EPF pension scheme that they would like have more access to. But at the same time, I don't know, because I don't know if it's the financially literate stance to take that we should make this more flexible. I'd always thought that my EPF would always, build up as my salary, my salary comes in, some will be subtracted for so and EPF, right? So I just thought that's kind of money that I will only see when I retire, right? So I don't know if this is a newer thing or if it's even a responsible thing to do, because that was the counter argument back then, saying that oh, we shouldn't let people touch their EPF because it's very irresponsible. What happens if, who knows, the EPF is used for collateral for something huge, like a house or a car or something like that, right? That could be very dangerous for your prospects down the line, later in the future. But yeah, that's what I feel really about this whole scenario about the EPF here. I always thought that it's something you have to just live with, so that you can make things a bit easier. But one thing I'm also concerned about is, I remember back in 2017 or 2018, I was looking at the DOSM statistics that Malaysia has a quite a young population. Average was at the time was about 31 years. But recently, the Department of Statistics Malaysia did say that we may face the prospects of an aging population in Malaysia, similar to the case in a lot of developing countries in Asia, such as Japan, South Korea, where the more developed some countries get, the less people would be having children, and the less people be having children, there'll be less younger people. At the same time, the advances in healthcare, medical services would have more older people living longer, who would be living off their pension already. So there'll be less young people paying in the workforce to help service, retiring older people of their pension. So that's the crisis right now Japan is having with when it comes to retirement schemes. A lot of younger people have to work harder and work more to compensate for the loss in labor, so that older people can retire with some dignity and a bit of grace and elegance. It comes with the prospects of retiring. So that is one thing I'm concerned about Malaysia. Maybe I'm being an alarmist here, but what do you think of this?
Before I go on to the how aging society we're gonna become in the next 20 or 40 years, I want to go back to just during the first pandemic lockdown that politicians meddling with all this supposed to be untouched money. Now that they opened the Pandora box, there's no way to shut it off. Yes, Anwar Ibrahim made it very clear that he is really against the withdrawal, the ILS for the purpose of emergency. Yes, everyone is in emergency during COVID time, but not everyone withdrawing from their retirement fund, because they know they're gonna face retirement one day, and we are gonna be an aging society. So that's why he, in fact, give some subsidies instead. Like give, I think around 500 ringgit to each and every account of EPF holders, so that they can have more in the future. So this is the problem of politicians, Adi, trying to having a shortcut and try to sort of helping the rakyat in order for them to survive during the COVID times. And then this is the source of it, and what Madani government doing by allowing this 10%, the third account, is just to actually to shut the all these proponents of that wants to have some withdrawals of EPF off, so from this, so that they will never speak of this again. now that you have 10% that you can withdraw anytime. So you should not talk about ILSTARI or another withdrawal restari in the future. So while I am against EPF doing this, I'm not an economist, so you can have your opinion on all you want. But I also understand that EPF doing this for political reason, so that Madani government will stop or put an end to this argument that another withdrawal should be allowed. On another side that you mentioned also, how society, yes, this is concerning because I think very recently as well, before the restructuring, DOSM also and EPF posted a statistic that for Malay, Adi, for Malay, this is the majority of the holders. These are also the majorities of the voters. They have on average median of 5,000 ringgit in their retirement fund. Not 50,000, Nadi, not 1,500, not 500,000. It's 5,000 ringgit on average in their account. This is by not by any standard would be sufficient for your retirement. So this is very worrying for the Malays when they're retired in the future. For the other two races that also they posted in the same statistic, for the Chinese, it's quite a bit more actually. I think it's around 40 or 50K or even more, I think, down there. So it's just shy from 100,000, but on average, that's what they have in their retirement fund. And for Indian, it's a bit high as well. I think it's around 20K. So I think we can see this is not just a something that because everyone had COVID, Adi, in 2020, but not everyone resorted to their retirement fund to survive another day. And this is clearly a political issue here because as we know, the proponent of wants to withdraw all this and they do so-called demonstrations in front of whatever office, government office, demanded of another withdrawal is appalling. And these are the Malay so-called leaderships that wants to hero all this. I think the other day we talked about Dr. Akmal, riding the wave of boycotting here and not years. I think a year ago, some of these Perikatan National leaderships riding on EPF withdrawal, and look at who's paying the price. It's not the politicians. It's not Muhyiddin Yassin's son-in-law, which whoever is still in outside Malaysia. These are the regular people, the regular mat that is depleting his retirement fund, and he's just have 5,000 in his EPF. So yet it's very alarming for Japan, Singapore that you mentioned, this country, while they have a very well EPF fund. Can you say the same about Malaysia, average Malaysians, especially the Malays, where they depleted their money and it seems to be no future for them? So it's very worrying with the cost of living that's getting very high. Healthcare is never going down in the slightest, at least for the last decade. And an aging society, healthcare is number one issue where even in Japan, a policy needs to be made to actually have certain money allocated to maintain this old folks homes, because as we know, Japan is one of the aging and declining population in the world. Yes, we are not there yet, but if we keep this trend, we are gonna be heading to that abyss as well. So yes, as much as this is maybe Adi, you are still in your early years, in your employment years, EPF is something very out of your priority, but more importantly, what it will do to other people as well, people who are actually in their 40s, people actually nearing their 55 of retirement age. This is more than just decisions, corporate decisions, but also political ones. And I think as much as we need call out other people, to be more prudent on their savings and whatnot, but the politicians on the other side allowing, encouraging, in fact, for such behavior should be called out as well. And yes, it's already done. Nothing can be done much about it. In fact, like I said, Prime Minister injected 500 ringgit into every account is the best that a government of today can do. And I am a bit worried as a society that moving forward, we, like, how are we going to see? Like, would you be concerned now that you are in your 20s? Pension is very far from you right now, but would you be worried now knowing this kind of statistic that we have?
So my whole concern about this whole EPF thing is not really just a conversation about the EPF as an institution, but I think the idea of pension in general. Because about 2 months ago, the government did have a whole debate about trying to scrap the pensions for civil servants across the board. Now, Malaysia has about 1.7 million civil servants. That's a huge part of our population. And that's going to affect a lot of them if we have to remove their pensions. But at the same time, a lot of civil servants in Malaysia, most of it which are Malay, did decide to actually go for the civil service, not because the salary is attractive, but because the pension and the retirement schemes are attractive in itself. You can have a lot of stories where a lot of former civil servants, they can just live very well just off the retirement scheme, pension scheme that the government has provided for them for their years of service. So you have Ong Kian Ming saying that this is a very huge issue that you're going to be affecting a lot of people. But at the same time, this is used to counteract what the government thought is to reduce the financial burden of the federal government. Because in 2040, it's projected that Malaysia would have to pay about 120 billion ringgit just to keep up the pension schemes for all these people, for Malaysians in general. So it's a very how do you say, it's an argument which I think has no definitive answers, and I don't think there's a right and wrong here. It just depends what kind of direction the government really wants to take with the idea of pensions. For me, I mean, it's hard to really say because I don't know how this would affect the long run. Of course, we already had to factor in the aging population, so there will be more people we'll be servicing pensions for. But then again, the government does need to free up some financial capacity so it can be able to do what it needs to do in terms of managing the uh, well-being of the country. Um, so it's a lot of whole like kind of worms, to be honest, for me, when it comes to talking about EPF and the pension. Maybe someone else would have a better way to explain this whole situation and this whole discussion. But I mean, for now, it's double-edged. So I see there's a pros and cons to everything, and I think depending on where you lie when it comes to what you want out of your pension and your retirement, that's going to decide how you're going to see this plan for the government expanding the mandate for EPF, but at the same time discussing the idea of reducing the pension opportunities for people in the service. But at the same time, that's counteracted by saying that, okay, if we're going to cut out pensions for new civil servants, we're going to increase the salary. Will that translate into a better delivery of the system? And will that be translated over to where the civil servants in the government sectors would have no choice but to opt for an EPF, apply for EPF accounts? So, or is everything going to be streamlined into the EPF itself? I think you can play. I think if you're the prime minister, right, or even the finance minister or whatever minister in charge, you have a lot of room for experimentation in how you want to play out with the pension and how it feeds back into Malaysia's economic well-being. So a lot to consider. I don't think I have the proper answer for it. But you have this?
Just on my last thought on this topic, Adi, is that just look at in this perspective that only 11% of salary goes to the EPF, and then out of this, 10% will be in the account tree. And this is supposed to be our retirement fund. And the dividend for all this account will be the same. So this is announcement also from EPF. And it's going to be lucrative. We need to practice a lot of self-disciplines and refrain from withdrawing this money because of the very good dividend, to put it into account one or account two again. So there is a hope. I think that's why they're doing this, creating another account, so that those who are with high discipline will put this money again from account 3 to account 2 or account 1, so that they can use really like 100%, as is intended to be 100% for retirement fund. For those with less discipline, I think this is where it will the questions of practicality and idealism will be at play. Yes, people may say like it's only 10%, but some people say, what, 10% out of a retirement fund? So over the years, that's gonna be a lot. Just gonna leave our listeners with one thought of this: like we should ourselves as individuals should responsible for our own retirement in the future. Yes, government play a role here and there, but I think they can only do so much. EPF can only do so much. Politicians can only do so much. So as a Madani, as you call it, civilized Malaysians, I think we should be more responsible and be more prudent when it comes to financial decisions. And we always moan about how government being very leaky about all their financial. Let's start from home. And I'm not economist. I'm not even a millionaire, but I think this is all
Not yet, not yet.
well, thank you very much. This is a rule of thumb that we should live by. And with that, Adi, with this episode with EPF, I think there's more into this, because there's certain 11th of May, it will be an effective date for this restructuring, and perhaps there's more announcement from EPF about this. Maybe a U-turn. I don't know.
Yeah.
So with that, yeah.
Well, for the listeners, if you are paying EPF, which I hope you are, because you're securing your future, give us your thoughts about this, because we only know what we know, and we want to know what if that money in EPF is being used responsibly. Like just this year, I think I finally graduated to becoming a taxpayer, having to finally file my income tax. So, we all have our financial responsibilities. EPF, I feel, is one of them, not for the state or the country, but for yourself as well. So I think it's a reminder to always be financially responsible. Yourself in the future, 5 years down the line, would thank you for it. So, but if you feel like you have any tips for that kind of thing, or if you feel like we're wrong in our prescriptions, then feel free to let us know.
Yes, especially if you're listening this on YouTube and looking at us right now. So down below, there's a comment section where you can put down your opinion on the topics. And if you like this kind of topic, please also comment down below, and we will talk more about this kind of topics. So if you're listening on Spotify as well, you can answer our Q&A. And there's more channels. If you want to enjoy short format content, you should head to TikTok and Instagram as well, because we post sometimes twice daily on our short content there. So with that, please subscribe and follow on our socials. With that, goodbye for now.